Welcome everyone to Weekend Escapades. Today we are back in Silver Reef, Utah, because we found an interesting story about Silver Reef, about a man named Tom Forrest. There was a disgruntled employee from the mine who got fired from that mine, and his story is a tale that leads him all the way
from the Silver Mining Company of Utah to the Silver Reef Jail and straight in to the St. George Jail to meet his demise. The year was 1880. Thomas Forrest, a Scottish Catholic miner, was working for the Silver Mine Company of Utah. He was aggressive and caused problems among the Scottish and the Irish immigrants. People didn't like Forrest, and he didn't like people. And on October 2nd, 1880, Michael Carbis, the foreman of the mine, was instructed to fire Forrest. Carbis was a well-mannered, very respected member of the community, and he was very aware of Forrest and was happy to fire him. So before Forrest's shift, Carbis advised him that his employment was terminated.
Now, Tom Forrest was housed in this jail right here before being transferred to St. George, Utah. Now, this amazing piece of old wood and iron, as you've seen in one of our videos before, was the original town jail, and it was located just a little ways down the street. It was also transferred to Leeds for a while, where it became an ice house and a storage room. But this jail has a really, really big story, and I'm going to get into that because it involves the mountains that are right behind this as well. As you can see around here, back over here is where those mines were located. And they found this gentleman in that mine after he committed his crime, and they transferred him again to this jail here as the story begins. Now, this is the location that he walked before he committed that crime, right here on Main Street and Center, and that crime housed them in the Silver Reef Jail.
Now, Forrest was very upset about the termination and would express his anger with Carbis to anyone who would listen. Forrest then started talking about killing Carbis. Nobody took him serious and thought he was just another disgruntled employee. Nobody paid much attention to the threats, so he went home and loaded his gun and started to sharpen his knife.
Okay, so here we are. We are headed down the trail. Behind us, you can see how steep this was that we came down. And you can look up there and see what's ahead of me, or behind me, I should say. And we were in search of the mine.
Now, Forrest awoke early the next morning, grabbed his knife and his revolver, and set out for the road that Carbis would walk to work on every day. He waited for Carbis at the side of the road, just outside the Buckeye boarding house. When Carbis walked by, Forrest asked to speak to him. Carbis told him he didn't have time. Then Forrest jumped at him and stabbed him. Constable Joe Hogue was nearby and attempted to arrest Forrest, but Forrest drew his revolver at Hogue. Hogue ran for help. The townspeople took the severely wounded Carbis to his house and his family near the Catholic Church. 2 doctors were called to dress the wounds, but there was little hope. Carbis died at sunset, surrounded by his wife, children, and many friends. Constable Hogue had organized a large posse of about 100 men. They found Forrest hidden in a mine shaft, arrested him, and threw him in the Silver Reef Jail.
We've been at this for about 20 minutes here at the Silver Reef Mill. Anyway, we're going to continue on, and I believe we're going to be heading up this way, up these hills here, to find out if the actual mine was up there where this person hid.
Now, word got out, and there was talk around town immediately about breaking Forrest out of jail and hanging him for the murder. Hogue got word of this and made arrangements to send him to the Washington County Jail in St. George, Utah. Michael Carbis had his funeral on October 5th. Every miner was given the day off with pay. Carbis was one of the most popular and loved men in Silver Reef. His passing not only affected his family, but the entire town. After the funeral, a large posse gathered in Silver Reef. Over 100 masked men gathered together to bring Thomas Forrest to justice by any means necessary. The large group of masked men arrived in St. George, Utah on October 6th at 2 a.m. in the morning and took custody of Forrest to bring him to justice in their own way. They attempted to hang Forrest from a pole that night. The pole was unable to hold his weight, and the wooden arm on the pole snapped off. The party then led Forrest to the home of George Cotton, where they hung him from a sturdy branch of a cottonwood tree in the front yard. When Forrest died of asphyxiation, the mob went back to Silver Reef, leaving the body hanging in a tree. And when the sun came up the next morning, a grisly sight met the eyes of the St. George residents. The town was horrified, but one man allegedly remarked, "I have observed that tree growing for the last 25 years. This is the first time that I have ever seen it bearing fruit." Now, this is a true story from the little town of Silver Reef, Ghost Town. And by the way, we finally found that mine shaft that he was hiding in.
Well, as you can see behind me, after a long trek in looking for this mine, it is right there. We're gonna get a little closer. It's barred off, which is a good thing because you have to be safe, but we're gonna take a look and just kind of take a look inside as far as we can. Now, it is said that Tom Forrest, while he was being looked at and chased by the posse from Silver Reef, that he hid right in this mine, and it took a while for the posse to find him and drag him out and take him to jail. There's some big rocks here. It's not that warm, but you never know about snakes because everybody tells me at the opening of a mine there's always snakes because they like to hide in the shade. That's about as far as we can see back. You can see they actually have some shoring timbers that are back there. You can't see them with the naked eye, but for some reason with the low light on the camera, that does a darn good job of picking it up.
Now, this story is about the murder of Michael Carbis, and this is the Silver Reef Cemetery where he is laid to rest, and we found that location right here and paid our respects. Silver Reef was a tough town in its day and an old mining town. We've had quite the adventure, and just looking through the old Pioneer Cemetery, every one of those white crosses are unknown except for a handful. We hope you enjoyed this story about Silver Reef Ghost Town. Be sure to like and subscribe, and as always,
that's going to do it for today, and until our next adventure, goodbye from Weekend Escapades.